Here is a request and my response to the request. I first share with you the request, and from now onwards I'm going to make a deviation from my set policy. I never used to reveal the identity of those who make suggestions and requests to me, but on second thoughts I feel that this anonymity is really uncalled for, especially after a person has made a written request, which is there in the response column, the response box. So he has already revealed his identity, and therefore it is right and proper that when I respond to a specific request, I also mention the person to whom I am indebted for it. Now, the person who has made this request is Mr. Gilbert Menezes. Gilbert Menezes. Now let me read out the request and then I'll make some comments. I have a small suggestion and some expectations from you. Language used in Parliament and in public, including the media, by the so-called leaders of India, lack taste and refinement. For example, words like papu, bal, buddhi, etc. are used ever so often. We have stopped thinking, it seems. We have stopped being civilized. We are practicing what is an uncivilized culture of abusing others instead of talking about issues. Please make an episode for the benefit of all of us on this and related issues. Thanks. So this is a request. This request came to me about a couple of hours ago, maybe 4 hours ago, and I was wondering what to do about it. I find it very difficult to ignore a request. And I also assume that maybe this is something that all of you are interested in, at least a good number of you are interested in, and therefore it makes sense for me to devote some time to answer or respond to this request. In essence, the request pertains to the lack of culture or the poor culture revealed through the uncivilized way of using language or use of uncivilized or uncivil styles of speaking in public communication. And particularly in situations where people expect a lot of seriousness or augustness, such frivolous, low culture talk is a matter of concern for all of us, and therefore would I say something about it, or would I make my opinion known about it? Yes, I'm going to do that, and I welcome all of you most affectionately to participate in this thinking process with me. By now, you would have realized that I am someone who attaches a lot of importance to language. First of all, I can never cease to marvel at this very mysterious phenomenon that we denote by the term communication. How do I communicate with you? If you really ponder over the mysteries of it, you'll be amazed that communication can take place at all. I'm a consciousness, you're a consciousness. In between us, there is this bridge of language. How can I be sure that when I use certain words, the meaning that I intend by using those words is understood precisely by you, or at least more or less approximately by you, and we are able to manage this very difficult and daunting task of communicating with each other, connecting our minds one with another. This very process has never stopped amazing me. The second thing is the phenomenon of language itself. What an amazing thing it is. I think of all the creations of man, language must be rated perhaps the highest. Because if there is no language, our very humanity will languish. It's difficult to express adequately the extent to which language nourishes both our individual existence and, in particular, even more, our social existence. Individual existence, because thinking always happens through the medium of a language. So if there is no language, there is no thinking. And if there is no thinking, there is no personality. And there is no inner freedom. So we are dealing with an issue of a very expansive significance. And I'm so very encouraged to find that many of you, perhaps a vast majority of you, perhaps all of you, are interested in this very humane subjects like this. Now, let me try and give it some kind of order to our thoughts. Why should we take language seriously? Why should we mind how we communicate ourselves? What does it mean to be civil, polite, and dignified or cultured in our communication? What happens if we are not very civilized in our communication? Why is it that some people find themselves more at home in very impolite, crude, vulgar, boorish language or expressions? And why is it that some people feel so upset? They develop a creepy kind of feeling when they're exposed to this kind of conversation that nowadays we hear more frequently in the public space. These are all questions about which we need to have some clarity. So let me get started. At this point in time, my memory goes back to a book I read a long time ago by a Greek or Athenian philosopher that all of you are familiar with. That's why it is not an atrocity to invoke his name. His name is Aristotle, Aristotle's Ethics. Now, Aristotle's main concern in ethics is how to nurture the good man, the good man. Aristotle is always fascinated by human goodness. How do we culture human goodness? How do we nourish it socially? Because a good man must have a good society. And how does the goodness of human beings express itself? This is a question to which Aristotle paid a lot of attention. So, the first thing I want all of us to know is that great philosophers attached profound significance to how we express ourselves and how we communicate with each other. Now, Aristotle says that the mark of a dignified man, I'm sure you will be interested in this. Please share these things with your children and your grandchildren. They will greatly benefit from knowing basics like this, because these things are never taught in schools. They are not mentioned in our public conversations, and don't expect this kind of knowledge from the media, and certainly not from politicians, especially given the kind of discourses that we are exposed to these days. Aristotle says that a dignified man speaks in a certain fashion. First of all, he says he never raises his voice. He speaks in a soft tone. The first thing Aristotle says about a man of dignity. He never shouts, he never screams, he never raises his voice, even if he is upset, even if he is grappling with very powerful emotions. He never raises his voice. He always speaks in a very controlled, soft tone. The second thing he says is that a dignified man speaks with evident deliberation. I'm using exactly the words used by Aristotle. A dignified man speaks with evident deliberation. That is to say, he doesn't make a virtue of speaking fast. Many of my YouTube friends in the last 1 year have expressed their irritation, their vexation at the slow pace at which I speak. There are many reasons why I speak very slowly. One, I am not able to speak fast. By nature, I am a slow speaker. Second, by nature I am a slow speaker, maybe because my tongue is heavy, which could be the organic physiological reason, or I could be thinking while I am speaking. When a person reels off from his glib and oily tongue, I'm using the expression from Shakespeare, glib and oily tongue. From a glib and oily tongue, words will just reel off, an incessant flow of words, like the monsoon downpour. Now, very often, a person who speaks like that may not be attuned to the discipline of thinking while speaking. We have to think what distinguishes us as human beings and what calibrates our merit, our gravity, is our quality of thinking. And I tell you, it's very easy to recognize a thinking man from the way he speaks. As you know, I've conducted thousands of interviews, both job interviews and admission interviews. And this is one parameter that I emphasized. I listen very attentively to the way a person speaks, from which I can fairly make out whether he has a thinking mind or not. And I have very little respect for a person who does not think and who simply uses words like dead counters. I will not go more into that for want of time. So, two attributes from Aristotle. One, a man of dignity speaks gently and he speaks with palpable or evident deliberation. He also goes on to say, and this doesn't relate to language as much as a person's way of conducting himself, his gait, G-A-I-T, not G-A-T, G-A-I-T. He says he walks slowly and deliberately. Just as he talks, he walks. His steps are deliberate. His way of speaking also is deliberate. So, in other words, he is in perfect control over his language, his ideas, his emotions, and his physical dimension. Everything is very neatly organized. Now, I do not wish to explain this any further. I'm just submitting this to your consideration. That's one thing. Okay. So, this is, the concern about language is also anticipated and to some extent addressed in what Aristotle has already taught us. Now, language, as most people know, is primarily useful in transacting our day-to-day business. So, communicating with each other in a kind of functional way. That's certainly true and that's important, it is necessary, but that's not the only use of language. Language, as far as I'm concerned, I value language mainly as the sanctified or sacred medium for me to touch somebody's inner life. There is no other means given to us to touch or influence, maybe enrich, maybe bring a little bit of happiness, joy, feeling of tenderness, feeling of being good, except language. So language allows us to enter into each other without committing any physical violence. So it's a non-coercive way of entering into the consciousness of other people. It is non-coercive because no matter how assertive I am, how insistent, how clamorous, and how assertive, you can always shut me out. It takes me not even 1 second. It takes you not even 1 second to silence me. Just pay no attention, that's the end of it. You can cut me off from your inner life in no time. That's your power. That's why I say that language is non-coercive, but at the same time, it's the only means given to us to influence the inner life of somebody. This is the reason why all founders of religions believed in teaching. Teaching is the affirmation primarily of the importance of language. But for language, there will be no teaching. You may be teaching science, you may be teaching sociology, you may be teaching any subject. You may be teaching literature also, as I did lifelong. Irrespective of the variations of the subject or field of knowledge that you are teaching, the common factor is language. Therefore, one basic strength that every teacher must develop, whether you are a teacher of mathematics or literature or science or philosophy or what have you, you have to develop your linguistic powers, your power of communication. And as Alfred North Whitehead, a philosopher to whom I made a reference in one of my earlier videos, in his book titled The Goals of Education, says that very many people think that in the teaching of science, imagination does not play a role. He says they are grossly mistaken. A science teacher who is not rich in imagination will be a very poor teacher. And language plays a very important role in enriching and empowering our imagination. That's one aspect of it. Now let me come to the more common day-to-day public aspects or issues related to this, which is what this friend of mine has raised. Now, language, you see, I sit before you having some clothes on me. Language is not like the clothes I wear. Unfortunately, there are many people who flaunt their linguistic abilities, just as they flaunt their very expensive branded clothes. Language is not to be flaunted at all. The use of language must be characterized most of all by sincerity. Now, I'm using sincerity here in a technical sense. Sincerity in expression means that between what you feel and what you communicate, there should be no difference. That is to say, when you use language, you must be truthful. You can't be sincere if you're not truthful. If you will be sincere if you're truthful, and you will be truthful if you are sincere. Now, for example, if I am responding to something that you say and I like it, I have to define my feeling towards you in relation to that particular instance exactly as I feel. I should not exaggerate it in order to please you, nor should I downplay it in order to dispirit you. That is sincerity, the exact correspondence of my expression to the truth of my feeling. That's the mark of a truthful person. So if you want to understand a person, whether or not he is truthful, whether or not he is sincere, please pay attention to how he or she speaks. A truthful person will never exaggerate. A truthful person will never also downplay. A truthful person will always phrase his ideas, especially his sentiments, in exact words, as exact as possible. But to be able to do that, we have to have a fairly high degree of command over a language. That's why it's easier for most of us to be sincere in our mother tongue than in a foreign language. All my life I have endeavored to learn the English language and cultivate some degree of acquaintance with it, but I tell you, even today, I am acutely aware of the fact that except when I am writing, I am not always able to be as perfectly sincere as I would like to be. I sometimes feel that there is a disparity between the exact emotions, the exact feeling I have, and the way I have couched it or expressed it. But when I write, there is a perfect match, because I write in a state of perfect self-control and emotional tranquility. So, how we use our language actually tells a lot about us. Now, this by extension means that only a good human being can use language properly and beautifully. This is not a matter of the extent to which you have mastered a language. Even a native speaker of a language will vulgarize his mother tongue if he is wicked at heart, or if he is degraded or cheap or corrupted in his sentiments, his emotions, and his inner life. Now, in a novel published in 1900 by Joseph Krzyzewski Conrad, is often named as Conrad. People know him by the last name Conrad. He was a person of Polish origin, then he became a citizen of Great Britain, and he wrote all his novels in English. The novel I am referring here is a novel titled Lord Jim. It was published in 1900. Now, there is a character in that novel called Schomburg. Now, he is a wicked character. He is a man of low taste. He is vulgar by nature. And there is a point, there is a context in which Conrad describes the way he speaks. You know what he says? He says his speech is like the sewer rush of words. Now, you must learn this expression by heart, because you can use it to describe perfectly the way some of our people in public speak these days. It's a sewer rush of words. You know sewer, no? Through which all the excreta and all the dirty things flow. Sewer. So, when he speaks, what comes out of his mouth is a sewer rush of words. Now, that is the way Conrad depicts or portrays the extent of the corruption, the moral corruption of the man. So, it's very important for us to realize that we are always judged in the public domain when we speak by people who are aware of most of these things. So, we have to be very careful about what we say, how we say, why we say what we say, the manner of speaking, so on and so forth. Now, if you are a good human being, you will always be positive. Goodness expresses itself as positivity. And the quintessence of positivity is that you are always keen to give the very best to the other person. You are positive to the other person means you want to impart some richness to that person. How can you do so? You can only do so by offering your very best. And that very best has two dimensions. One is good ideas, good sentiments, good emotions, good feelings towards him or her. And the other is to offer that through the best medium, through the best forms of expression that you have. To take a physical analogy, suppose somebody you love very, very much, somebody you value very much, maybe a teacher or a thinker or a public author that you greatly admire, but it just comes to visit you in the house and you are making a cup of tea. You will not only use the best quality tea leaves available, the best high quality milk available, you will also use the best crockery for it, and will also offer with utmost respect, with a kind of ceremonial perfection. All that is part of expression. So that tea is what he's going to drink, but how the tea is offered to him is extremely important. Suppose you make the best quality tea in the world and you put it in a cup which is dirty, and then you offer it to the person who is to drink it in a kind of very indifferent, insolent manner. That person may not even drink it. He'll feel insulted, at least he'll feel disappointed. So that's the importance of language. Now, you cannot cultivate good expressions, good language, good way of communicating without becoming good yourself, because after all, language, if you like, is like your skin. I said it's not like your clothes, perhaps it's like your skin, much more than your skin, but here, for the sake of an analogy, I'm saying, let's consider that it's like your skin. Your skin will have only the shape that your body has. There's no point in trying to, change the shape of your skin in one area because it may look better. No, it's not possible. Your skin will have only your shape. The same goes for the quality of the language you will use. The first thing to do is not to learn good English, good Malayalam, good Tamil, good Hindi. The most fundamental thing is to try and become a good human being. Now, one of the British authors who understood this very well and attached a lot of value to this is my favorite novelist, Charles Dickens. I began my career as a teacher of English literature by teaching Dickens's Oliver Twist. That was the first novel I taught in my entire life, the first novel. And Dickens was so particular about people using the English language properly with due respect, that if he came across somebody who vulgarized the language, he would actually buttonhole him, take him to the police station and lodge a complaint against him. That was the zeal of the man for the dignity of the language that he loved so much. There is something to be said about it. Now, the nobility of your soul, the sublimity of your imagination, the quality of your spirit, all these things are reflected in the language you speak. Let me give you a statement by Tagore. Tagore is very dear to us and he is very easy to understand. Rather than quote from Milton or Shakespeare or Dante or Homer, let me just give a few words from Tagore. Tagore said, "I stand under the golden canopy of your evening sun and look you in the face." What does he say? The sense of reverence that Tagore feels in the evening as the sun sets, and he takes in the entire emotions that invade his inner being. And he says, "I stand under the golden canopy." Canopy is the cover, no? Golden because the sun is setting, and the sun sets sometimes, it imparts a golden color to the horizon. "I stand under the golden canopy of your evening sun and look you in the face." That's language. Do you think words like this can come from a corrupted heart, a crooked mind, a degenerate soul? So, my dear friends, the concern that our friend has raised is a very important one. As a teacher of a language and as a lover of all languages, I feel so pained by the way public communications are undertaken, even by people who occupy very exalted positions in this country. Parliamentary debate. I was about to say, please pay some attention to it. Perhaps I should say, don't for God's sake pay much attention to it. Because the way things are expressed, the manner, the tone, the style, it is sometimes jarring on our nerves. Why do people revel in bringing out the very worst out of them, the worst sentiment, the most galling, hurting, humiliating, dispiriting expressions? and the way people speak, as though words are stones with which one's adversaries are to be pelted, as though words are weapons. Why do we weaponize language? Why do we weaponize communication? All this shows an alarming extent of a cultural, but not only cultural, moral decay. Moral decay. If you are not corrupt in your morality, you cannot speak like this. Rest assured. So if you find a man who expresses himself naturally through degraded language, please understand that the problem is not only cultural, the problem is not only linguistic, the problem is fundamentally moral. Moral. I emphasize, it's a moral problem. Language is a great gift given to us by the Creator. We can do wonders with it. With one word, we can cheer up a dispirited, drooping spirit. With one word, we can discourage and demoralize a human being. We can ennoble, we can also besmirch. We can bring a cheer, we can drive away a smile. The power of language. But to be able to use the power of language in a life-ennobling, culture-enriching manner, one has to be a good human being. And that's what we should be aiming at. As Indians, we should take pride, if at all pride is legitimate, it's only in this context, that we set our hearts and minds after becoming better and better so that someday we can become good human beings. Then indeed we will be legitimate and appropriate children of Bharat Mata. Therefore, I would also say that becoming good human beings is the most quintessential expression of creative and affirmative patriotism, as against the vulgarized, crude, aggressive, gaulish patriotism that so many people wear upon their sleeves, which is so very disappointing sometimes. It borders on the vulgar. Anyway, since time is already up, I'm going to conclude, not that I have done justice to the topic. I offered you some preliminary reflections on the basis of which you can undertake your own reflections maybe in course of time. I'll supplement this, the content of this video with a further video, maybe more than one video. I do not know at this point in time, I'm not very sure, but I'm glad I could share some of my thoughts with you through this video. And once again, I conclude by thanking my friend for suggesting that I do this video, and I think I have enjoyed doing this video, and therefore I have some reason to hope that you will enjoy seeing this and mulling over it. Jai Hind. Thank you.